Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage, and today we need to get this into this. Now, follow me along through the intro, and we'll get into what we got to do. And alright, so today I'm still waiting on my cylinder head to come back from being ported and having valve job and stuff done for this 306 cylinder project going into the 70 Torino. So I figured it would be easier if I just put the motor and transmission in the car. It'd make it easier to torque the head instead of fighting with this engine stand. But there's a couple of issues we got to work through first. So let's get into those. So I need to get the converter in the transmission. I need to get the flex plate on the back of the motor. So basically what I do before I even try to bolt all this stuff together, I will set my flex plate on my converter and make sure all my bolt holes line up. And these do. But we do have an issue here. Now, you may be asking what this issue is. Well, this converter will not sit flat in here. I got it kind of pulled to one side, but it literally hits on this center lip in here, and you see it holding it off the flex plate right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a flat disc and just knock this little edge down right here until we can get this converter to sit flat on this flex plate. And that's why you always mock up your parts beforehand, because if you'd got this in the car and you tried to bolt that together, you wonder why your starter made funny noises or you had this weird vibration that you couldn't figure out. So let me get those ground down and I'll be back. And the reason we're having to do this is this rounded lip on the inside of the outside of the engine side of this flex plate. Now this is an E4OD flex plate, and this is a C6 converter. So basically what I done, I just come in here and just rounded these edges off with a flat disc. Won't hurt anything, won't affect the balance, because I ground them all off as evenly as I could. Just enough to give a little rounded edge, and this little feller will sit on there flat. So just one of those things you gotta check when you do this kind of stuff. And the less surprises you have once you start trying to bolt things together, the better. So at this point, I guess I need to put some fluid in this converter, so let's get to that. And while this slow process happens, there's nothing fast about this, but we need to at least get a cord in this converter, just so when we do start the car, it won't be a dry start. And this is what I'm using in here. This is what I'll use in all race transmissions that I do. I used to use John Deere High Guard. It's hard to find anymore, so the VP stuff works just as well. So we'll let it sit there and burp itself out. And a super helpful Ford tip here, guys. Always make sure your block plate is on before you put your flex plate on. Another thing, these 300 inline sixes, just like the 302 and 351 Windsor, your flex plate bolts actually go inside to the oil. So make sure you use a thread sealer on this. Usually I Loctite these, but make sure you use a thread sealer, or you could have oil seepage out of these holes and make you think your rear main seal's leaking. So just a helpful tip. Let's get this thing installed. Alright, I got all these flex plate bolts torqued. Another helpful hint on Ford, the dish always goes towards transmission or converter side. Put this thing in there backwards, you're going to have starter problems. you don't put your block plate in there, you're going to have starter problems. So just make sure you put this stuff in the proper orientation. So now I got to get this motor set in the floor, get this converter that is finally finished pumping fluid in it into the transmission. Then we can make the two together. And then it's time to go down in that hole. All right. Before you put your converter in, you want to lube that snout of that converter with a little transmission fluid. You want to make sure that your shaft is all the way seated. And this converter will go in here and drop 3 times. Basically, you just want to make sure your converter's seated into the pump. And on the forward, if you can't stick your fingers back here between the seal surface and the converter, it's all the way seated. Now, we just got to get this connected to this. A lot of you probably wonder why I didn't paint that flex plate. It's not going to matter. You won't never see it. So, yep. Let's get them two together. So how am I going to get the motor and transmission bolt together in the floor like this? Well, I'll flip it around and show you a trick that I've used for years. And you can do this by yourself without a bunch of wrestling or fighting. So let me flip it around. So if you get a flat oil pan like this, it has a tendency most of the time to want to tip towards the front up here. So what I've done, I took a little 2x4 and a piece of cardboard to keep scratch spot on my oil pan. And what that does is tilt that motor back. And I use the cherry picker to manipulate the angle slightly until our dowel pins fell right in and I could put our bolts in. All the belt housing bolts are in torqued, except for this one right here that's holding my chain to lift the motor. And when I get it back in the car, I'll take that off and put it on the back side and tighten it up. But right now, we're pretty much ready to go in the car. You may be asking about the converter bolts. I will put those in when I get it in there and before I put the starter on, because you can do it through the starter hole. But wouldn't it be easier to put the converter bolts in now? Absolutely it would, and I would highly urge you to go ahead and do that. But in this case, I don't have the bolts, so I'm going to have to get some. So I've already figured out what thread length and what thread diameter these are. So I'll stop in the morning, grab some, and we'll put those in there then. Well, it's a little while later, and you know, I got this stuck down in the hole. So at this point, we're ready to put these motor mounts on. I can get this floor jack, jacked up, and we get this transmission cross member and transmission back under the car. So let's get busy. So guys, this really isn't much of a different process than the video where I mocked all this stuff up. So if you haven't yet, make sure you like this video and make sure you comment down below, because it helps YouTube pick this stuff up on its algorithm, and I appreciate hearing your comments. So let me get these motor mounts on here, and maybe we can get this all bolted in today. And another helpful tip here. This is the factory 7071 Torino crossmember bolt. This is a 1/2 inch 13 carriage bolt, but it's flat on the top. I went down to the Home Depot to try to find something close, and they had these carriage bolts right here. And they're the same length, just don't have the easy started thread on the bottom. And they also got taller hex, which will be super helpful instead of trying to hold this old stripped out hex up here at the top, trying to hold on the corners of this to get it on and off. Plus this old nut's pretty spanked. So 1/2 inch 13 carriage bolt, take the old one with you, match your length up, work just fine. And a lot of you probably wondering why I'm not showing the undercar stuff, because this is my phone mount all the way down, and this is what we're stuck with. So it's easier for me to explain what's going on than what actually goes on. But your cross member bolts can go through here. We'll go through your cross member hole down here at the bottom that you can't really see. But down there, you know, kind of tight clearance under here with the floor jack holding transmission up. Getting these motor mount bolts on here. Well, motor is bolted in. Transmission cross members bolted in. Transmission mount, motor mounts are all bolted in tight. And went in pretty easy, guys, compared to, you know, what I expected. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the dry shaft back in the car and tidy up some more undercar things like my shifter. I'll still have to get back on there, put the converter bolts in, run some transmission lines and all that stuff. Even if our cylinder head don't get done tomorrow, at least I can go ahead and start laying this stuff out the way I want it and plan ahead. So let's see where else we get, and I'll be back. So who doesn't like laying on the ground putting the dry shaft in? Not me. So while I'm putting this together here, anybody see the line right here? Anybody know why that's painted on there? Well, I'll let you know. It's to let me know if this drive shaft spins inside itself. This is a factory, let's just say it's a two-piece drive shaft with a rubber isolator in between the two tubes. And it's been in this car forever, and I've never had no problem with it. And I started having U-joint problems. And that's going to be another thing, guys. Ford uses a different U-joint than the normal 1310 that most parts stores will tell you. It's actually just a little bit wider, and the caps are just a little bit bigger on one side. Which this is the factory 9-inch center section and stuff in this car. But it does have a spool in it, a lightweight full spool, and a factory Ford 411 gear. The gear wasn't factory in this car, but it is a factory Ford gear. So, big thing with U-joint straps, you don't want to over tighten them. I just pretty much snug them up with my hand, and then just give them a little extra pull. But this is all that fun stuff that is boring for me to video, and nobody really wants to watch it. But you know, I figured it'd be neat to show y'all how to make sure a dry shaft isn't spun on itself and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna get tightening these U-bolts up, and I'll be back. And on a side note, since I'm under here, anybody see the adjustable shock and the Calvert bars? Yeah, they help the car hook. Oh, and I seen on one of the Torino pages, guys were arguing over what color the factory floor pan was on these cars. A lot of people said they were red oxide, and I commented that it was a mixture of leftover paints and stuff that they used on the bottom of the floor. And you see, I'm right here by the shock mount. This is original paint under this car. I wiped some of the dirt off of it. This thing's pretty dirty because it actually got drove. But you can see bare metal there. This is the factory paint right here. It's like a grayish with the factory light gold overspray. This was a factory light gold car, so you see little speckles of the overspray. But it's literally just all their leftover paint mixed together. And also, if anybody's curious, this is my fuel system right here. Sump tank, you know, fuel pump, fuel filter, dash 8 lines. And we got a slider peeking through back there. This thing's pretty dirty underneath. It's not rusty, but it's dirty. I probably should actually come under here and paint this whole car. So, I know the paint thing was kind of random, but, you know, Ford literally, under these cars, guys, they use their leftover paint. So, hopefully somebody sees this and that helps them out in their restoration. They didn't tape on these cars up. Whatever the outside color was, got oversprayed all over everything. Whatever base color they decided to spray it that day. Alright, so at this point I got our temperature gauge hooked up. Oil pressure gauge is hooked up. I swapped to the EFI F-150 throttle cable. Because it's going to have to go all the way over here to the passenger side. So this one's a little long, but I had got a new one for a 306 cylinder for early 70s F100 or mid 70s F100. And while it's longer than the factory Torino cable, it's not that much longer. But this one should be more than long enough. Uses a GM style push-in end right here instead of the old bolt-on. So hopefully, I'm just using one of them universal throttle brackets over there and everything will be happy. So now, on this cylinder head, we can finish putting some more stuff back together. So I guess this is going to be the end of this video. I just wanted to kind of bring y'all along for the ride so you had an update on the 306 project. So, yep, got a lot done today. There's still a lot more to do. There'll be a lot more to do on top of that. So, follow along with me through this little mini series, and hopefully it won't be too long. We'll have this thing mocking up a turbo. So, appreciate everybody that watches. If you don't care, hit that like button, comment down below, and most importantly, if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see y'all at the next video. Thanks for watching.